How's it going, guys? What I wanted to do in this video is actually take you through the process of writing a program for a dual duct air handler system. If you have been watching a couple of my previous videos, you have seen me talk about the new FAC DX adapters that Johnson Controls has. These devices replace a DX9100 with minimum rewiring. Basically, you just run power to the new device, run your network to it. You might want to go back and check out those videos for a little bit better explanation. What we are actually going to do now is write a program that we're going to be using in one of them. We're going to be doing this on an air handler that we have. We are actually going to upgrade this system from N2 to BACnet. You can see here, I've got pulled over here the air handler that the device is going to be going on. We've been doing a little work with these, been doing some upgrades of some older devices instead of just trying to replace them with another older device with software changes that I've talked about previously as well. We're just finding it easier to upgrade some of these devices if we start having issues with them. And so what we've decided to do with this building, there is only 4 devices on this particular NAE. It is one NAE of 3 that is in this building, and this particular device, well, NCE. This one, it's an easy upgrade for us. I've already written the programming for the chilled water system and the other air handler, and in this video I'm actually going to bring you through with me to write the programming for this air handler that you currently see on the screen. It's a very simple process, but one of the things that you need to be aware of, especially when you do your changes, is there are differences in the way your points are going to pull in on an FAC. I'm just going to minimize these just a little bit and show you a little bit more what I'm talking about. This is the paperwork here for an FAC adapter. Okay, this is something that you're going to need. You're also going to need a copy of the wiring sheet for the DX9100. If you're able to print out a copy of the program, that will be good. If you have drawings on your particular unit, that would be good as well. But what we're going to do here, I want to get down here and show you. This, of course, is the back panel that you see coming up on the screen. The FAC adapter will plug directly into that, but this is what you need to be aware of right here. Right here, what we have is the way the points are going to transfer over on the FAC from the DX9100. You can see here the points. You notice there's a little bit difference in the numbering. This sheet is very handy. You can look it up online. Just do a search for the DX9100. But we're going to talk about this a little more later. But right now, what we're going to do is we are going to begin a new program. So I'm going to go to File. I am going to go to New, and we are going to get this window right here, and it's going to give us where we can name the system. We can also select the system type. Of course, this is going to be an air handler. Right now it is selected to a mixed air single duct system. That is not what we need. What we need is the mixed air dual duct system right here. I'm going to hit that. Of course, I'm going to leave my system of units on Imperial. I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to bring my configuration window up. This is what you're going to need to know about, this is where you're going to need to know about your air handler. You're going to need to know all the details about the actual physical components of your air handler. Of course, with this unit, we do have a variable speed supply fan. We do want the fan status. If you do have alarms and that sort of things, you can add them right here as well. I mean, you can add them on later on in the programming, but you can select that. This particular unit, we do not. Okay. We do not have any physical switches on that or alarms, at least not on the supply fan. If I go on down, you can see here is my return fan. I need to actually check that, and I'm going to drop down for a minute just to look at the options I have here. For a return fan, of course, it is variable speed. This particular unit, we do not have an airflow measuring station, so basically it is going to be left defaulted to track the supply fan. Okay, that's very important. If you do have an airflow station, you can add volume matching, that sort of thing, in with your unit. We do have fan status. Again, we do not have any kind of alarms or anything that we can tie to that. You can set a loss of airflow strategy, which automatic restart, manual restart, that sort of thing. It's up to you, just depending on how your system is set up. Right here, alarm management, we are going to leave all of this because we do not have a lockout switch. If a safety trips, the safeties on this particular unit are hardwired through the start circuit. So we do not need to add any of that. All right, the fan, right here, we can select which fan is going to start first. Of course, we are going to select supply. There are some units, for whatever reason, you may want to select return. It just depends on what is going on in your building and how your system is set up. We currently do not have any exhaust fans tied to this, so we can just skip it. Now, right here, our economizer, the way that it works is going to be set here. Economizer dampers are common proportional mixed air damper output. If you have sequenced dampers, if you need multiple outputs, say if you have one actuator for a supply damper, one actuator for a return damper, then that's where you're going to select this here. That's what that gives you the options here if you need those. For our particular unit, we do not. The economizer, just all the options are right here for anything that you would need for the economizers. We're just going to go through here on down. Outdoor air, we do want that on this unit. There are some other options as well. This is just a straight sensor, but let's go back and double check something real quick. I just want to take a minute because, guys, I'm writing this live. I'm writing this as you're seeing it. The program that you're seeing me do on the screen is what we are going to be loading into the system. And I want to go back and just double check to see if I am passing the outdoor air temp or if I am actually pulling it straight from the unit. And what I am seeing is there's our floor, here's our static pressure, return, mixed air temp. Okay, I do not, right here. This is a passed outdoor air temperature. And the way that I know that, if I view this, it is a writable point. Select hardware, and you can see it's a data file. It is a data point, ADF5. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. So what I am actually going to do then, where I have the outdoor air right here, this dry bulb outdoor air economizer set point. When I get to the section that you'll see in a few minutes on this system, I'm not going to be selecting a hardware outdoor air sensor. All right, this is a data point that is passed into this air handler, but the economizers are going to be running based upon that outdoor air temperature. Of course, there's going to be a lockout set point, that sort of thing. And we have our other options here as far as our outdoor exhaust air damper minimum position, reset by CO2. If you're measuring CO2 in your building, that is something that you may want to select. If you want it to calculate to where it tries to control for the CO2 in your building. We do not have it on this system, so I'm going to scroll on down. Let's see, minimum outdoor air fan and damper, and we're just going to go through and scan through these. Reduce outdoor air on low temperature. I'm going to leave that selected. Temperature control strategy. This particular system is a fixed hot and cold deck temperature set point. You can set it up to where you would calculate the hot deck and cold deck set point based upon zone temp or that sort of thing. Return air as well. It just depends on how your system is configured. Right now we're just going to leave that where it is. Occupancy control is of course going to come from the network. Scheduled occupancy, it is something that is not always occupied, but if you have a unit in a particular environment, say a lab environment or just wherever, there are some situations to where you would need a controller or a unit to run continuously, but this one does not. All right, let's see here. When we unoccupy it, we want it to shut down completely. You can see here, you actually can leave the fans and things running, but when this unit is unoccupied, we want it to shut down completely. Okay, I'm going to scroll on down. Here is where we are going to start dealing with the coils. This particular unit does not have a preheat coil. It just has the hot deck and cold deck coil, so I'm going to unselect that, and then I'm just going to minimize it. Here's our cooling coil options right here. We do not have a condensate alarm. Basically, this valve is a proportional actuator that is already selected for us. If you have an I can never say that word, that actuator, incremental actuator, then that's where you would select it. Two-position actuator, whether it's just on or off, that sort of thing, you would select it there. Of course, ours is proportional. I'm going to go on down. If you have sensors measuring the water temperatures going into your unit, you can select those here. We do not, so we will be leaving it. Also a pump, if you have a pump on it. In the event of a shutdown, what we want to do is to protect the coil. If there is any kind of an alarm or anything if that air handler goes down, we want it to do whatever it is necessary to protect that coil. We do not want to be replacing coils. I'm going to scroll on down. Loss of airflow strategy, I'm just going to leave those off, that sort of thing. And then now we have the hot deck, and it's going to be very similar for it. Okay, for the hot deck, it's a proportional valve. They're virtually the same between these two coils. I mean, we're just going to leave everything the same between them. And scroll on down. We do not have humidification control. All right. If you are controlling for humidity, you would select that, then you would get the set point and your humidification readings, your humidity levels within the building, usually on return air, that sort of thing. And you can do some other things. You can pass it from zone humidity, that sort of thing, do your averages. There's a lot that you can do just depending on how you set your system up. You can also, some other optional features. You remember I mentioned earlier about that we were going to be doing a couple of changes. I do want a unit enable. Basically, that is a master switch for this whole system. I want to take a minute to talk about this. All right, if you are going to be placing this device on an N2 trunk, you should select this N2 compatibility options tab. All right, you highlight it here, it's going to give you a few options here. If you're going to be replacing a controller like a DX9100, that sort of thing, you would highlight this, okay? Since this is not going to be going on an N2, we are going to be putting it on a backnet trunk. I am going to leave this unchecked, all right? Now, one thing that I have noticed, even when there are situations to where you would put it on an N2 trunk, when you check that, it does not always configure your outputs the way that they need to be. So that's something that you need to be aware of, that we're going to be going over a little bit more detailed here in just a few minutes. Again, I'm going to leave that unchecked. Okay, this is going to be a backnet trunk. I'm going to hit next, and it's going to bring me to another set of options here. I have here just some options, optional points here, such as modulated damper outputs. If there's anything else that I need to add in, VSD outputs, no feedback. If you were getting some kind of a feedback from your drive or whatever, this is what you would select here. Outdoor air. This here is one of the options we will not be selecting. What the software will do, however, is it will populate a network outdoor air sensor. Since we selected previously that we would be controlling the economizers off of outdoor air temperature, it will populate for us a network input. Okay, if I select this, it would actually be a hardware input instead of a network input. So I'm not going to check that. That's something that you need to be aware of. And the more you do this, the more you will become familiar with it. Okay, I'm going to scroll on down. We see here minimum outdoor air. If you are measuring your outdoor air, again, if you have a flow station, you can select that. We do not with this unit. We can also measure discharge air, humidity, CO2, that sort of thing, if you have all those in your system. We do not in this unit. Scrolling on down, and it's just basically more of the same. We have a return air temperature sensor. This is something we do have in this unit, so I'm going to select it, and I'll just go right back to Metasys real quick and show you. Of course, here's our mixed air temp right here. Here's our return air temperature, and let's double check to make sure that we do have our mixed air selection made. Okay, we do have our temperature here for return air. Just bear with me, guys. I told you that I'm going to try to do this live. Mixed air, okay, it's not giving us that option. I think it will go ahead and populate that for us, but we'll see, and if it doesn't, we can add it in very easily. So let's scroll on down. More optional equipment. And this is some of your safeties. Pre-filter, filter switch, final filter switch. Now, if you look back here, we do have a filter alarm. Let me scan through here just real quick. I was thinking that we had one on this system. High static pressure, low static pressure, filter status right there. Okay, that's set to off, but we'll change that. So what we will do is go back in CCT, and that is on the final filter, so I am going to add a filter switch. The difference between these two is basically the difference between an analog input and a binary input. You can see on the one that we have here, that is a binary input. Okay, it's just like a status, it's on or off. If you have an alarm or that sort of thing. If you select the filter differential pressure sensor, that's going to be an analog input to your system, and it will tell you, the difference in, the static pressure drop across your filters. From that, you can set up an analog alarm or whatever. Okay, so we're going to select this since ours is the binary, and I'm going to scroll on down. Some of the alarms. Let's double check our alarms on our system. You can see here we do have a high static pressure alarm and we have a low static pressure alarm. This low static pressure switch is in the return side. It prevents the ductwork from collapsing if there is too much negative pressure in the return duct. So we're going to go back in here and we are going to select our high pressure static switch. And we are also going to select our low pressure static switch. Okay, once we have this selected, just scanning through real quick, we do have freeze protection right here. This is our low limit temperature switch. If you have a high temp temperature switch, you would select that here. Basically, if your discharge temperature gets up too high, you can have a safety for that as well. This particular unit, we do not have it. We do not have a humidity safety switch or humidity alarm or anything like that. Okay, and there are just some more options here. Fire dampers, if you have fire dampers attached, which we do not. Once you get everything selected off of this configuration window, press the finish button. Okay, once you press that finish button, it's going to take it a minute, but it is actually going to populate a lot of the system for you. You can see here it's still pausing. The it's still rotating my mouse, and it will take it just a moment, and then you're going to start seeing things happen on the screen here. Okay, now this is where we are currently at. The first thing that I would recommend you do once you get that far, save your work. Save as, and I'm going to name it. Of course, it's already given me the name. And this should be AHU. It's already got my name here. I'm going to hit save. And now we can begin to do some of the other things necessary. One thing that I like to do first, I'm going to go to the Define Hardware tab. And in the Define Hardware tab, this is where you're going to select your controller and that sort of thing. You can see right here that right now what it's doing is giving me an error, basically. It's telling me that it does not have all of the hardware points it needs for what we're trying to do. So what I'm going to go do here, you can see here it has already selected a controller for me that is not the right one. I'm going to hit my select button, and the particular one that we want for an FAC adapter is going to be the 3611. Okay, this is the one that you're going to need to select for replacing that back panel, that DX9100. Okay, once you get that selected, once you have it selected, the only thing that you're going to have to do next. Now, I know this is a little bit confusing with that saying 3611 when the FAC adapter itself has a completely different number on it. Like FAC 3613 as we show here, but I don't know why that labeling is not correct or why there's some differences in them, but the particular one you're going to need to select is that one. Okay, I'm going to hit the OK button, and you're going to see that I still have this particular fault here, and it's because I have not saved it. Okay, I'm going to change the system name HU1 because that's what this one is. When I hit OK, you're going to see it's going to change that controller, and that has gone away. Now that we have got the FEC selected, we are going to be adding an additional IOM. There are some points that we will be building into this system, and what we're going to be getting is the IOM 2721. There's just a couple of extra points that we want for what we're going to be using. We do have within this system, we are reading some of the zone temps from a couple of the floors. Once I select that, it's going to give me this option here to add the total number of devices that I need. And of course, I just need one. So that's where I'm going to leave it at. And I'm going to hit OK. You can give it a different name, that sort of thing. But that's what we need so far. And just to show you right here, what we actually have is we are reading a couple of the floor temps. There's just originally this system had a completely different control scheme. All throughout the building, everything was pneumatic, and the air handler basically would control, it would try to maintain these zone temps basically. That's how it would run previously. Of course, even since then, there were some modifications done to where it's basically running just off of a discharge set point for each of the two decks, whether it's heating or cooling. And again, we're changing it again. So what we have now is we have our IOM selected, we have our controller selected. I'm going to hit close. Now, what we need to do is I'm going to go into the programming a little bit because there is something that I do want to modify. I'm going to maximize this, and just to show you, the supply fan output is one that needs to be a little slower than what you may think. It needs to be a whole lot slower than what this system calls for by default. So what I'm going to do is right click this, show involvement, and it's going to tell me everything involved with the supply fan output control. All right, our duct static pressure control, I'm going to right click that. I'm going to select our view logic. All right, that's how you can tell if a program, if you're needing to see a little bit more in depth into a program and you're wanting to know what logic blocks affect a particular output. What we have here, this section here of that, if you've never messed around with this type of logic, do a search on my channel. I've got a whole playlist just on CCT. I talk a little bit about it, and I'm going to be doing more videos about it in the future, so be sure to subscribe for when those come out. This part of what we're seeing here, the ones that are connected, it's basically controlling this block here. When I go in and I actually highlight a particular point in that, this is how the state-based logic is, you can see that that changed. All right, if I go to off, I go to ramp, I go to hold, set point control, all that's different. When you highlight a different section of it, What you edit in here is going to be editing for that particular mode of operation. If I click back up here to the top, this is basically going to be the logic involved with selecting the mode. Okay, and you can also see here, if I click this, bring this up, I can actually see all of my connection blocks here. I can see exactly what's controlling that mode, and that sort of thing. I'm not really going to drill into going back to other things now, but that's how you can see it if you need to. So we are going to go into the ramp block. I'm going to go into the rate limiter, double click into it, and what I'm going to do here, I am going to change this down to 28 changes per minute. That's going to slow this ramp rate down some. I'm going to hit apply, and I'm going to close that out. I'm also going to go into the static pressure control. When I highlight that, you've seen the change there. And here is the PID loop for that. Here is our rate limiter. I'm going to dive into it. And right now it's set for 100 changes per minute. That's way too much. I'm going to drop that down to 28 as well. And I'm going to hit apply. And once I get that done, I'm actually going to go back into the control block, and I need to add a couple of analog outputs, or analog inputs, I'm sorry. And those are going to be the ones for these additional sensors here, okay? So what I'm going to do here is go over to my inputs tab. I'm going to right click, new, and it's going to take it a minute to populate, and I'm just going to write zone temp. Okay, it's an analog input. Right here you can see that it's giving me the options for the types of inputs, whether it's a 4 to 20, 0 to 10. Look at the type of sensor that you have before you select this. That's going to be critical. You're going to need to know that. And for what we have, it is a 1000 ohm sensor right here. It is the nickel. There's platinum, there's nickel. If you get these switched, you're not going to get the reading accurate. So I'm going to need 3 of those. So I'm just going to increase that value to 3. If you're doing just one, you can actually put the names in right here. But since I'm doing 3 now, I'm just going to hit finish. And then you can go back in and change those names. Once I hit that finish button, it takes it a minute, and then it populates them here on the left hand of the screen. You can see right there, 1, 2, and 3. That's going to be the first floor, second floor, and third floor. So you can go in here and double click. You can edit, and we'll go ahead and do it while I'm here. Just change it, just a little bit of cleanup. Change this to first floor. Hit apply. I'm going to then close that out. I'm going to get to the next one, and you can see that it moved it some, so I'm going to double click in here. Just let me delete that out. Hit apply. And really I could eliminate these sensors, but while they are there, it's possible that we could use them for something. It's real hard to say. I could use them for some calculations, but it just basically gives us an idea of what the floor average temperature is. Of course, we can see that with all the VAVs, but originally we could not, just because it was all pneumatics prior to a renovation that was done back a few years ago. And now that I've got those saved, I'm going to go right back to my Define Hardware tab. So there's something in here that I want to show you. All right, and once I get in here, I had mentioned earlier about the points, and of course you also have your network settings. Right here, you're going to need to go in here, make sure that you change your network settings here, the device address, whatever it's going to be. You need to enter that here. I've not set these yet. Again, I'm doing a whole trunk. Those 4 devices. I just need to sit down for a minute. It doesn't take 5 minutes to change it. But once I get in here, I'm going to go back to the point assignments, and you can see here those 3 zone temps. They're right here on the left-hand side. I need to add those. And what I need to do on that, since these are going onto expansion modules, or where they're currently on expansion modules, is that I need to make sure that they go on the IOM. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to hit this button here, and you're going to see it populate it, but it put it up here. That is not where I need that to be. I need it to be down here on this IOM module. So I'm going to click it once, and then I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to drag it down to the IOM module. Same here. I'm going to get this one. I'm going to hit my button, and again, it put it up here. That's not where I need it. I need to grab it. I need to bring it down here. And the main reason is, again, this is a device that is plugging onto a DX9100 back panel. The whole purpose of that is to keep us from having to change so much of the wiring. I get that drug down, we're good to go there. Now, all of the point assignments that are currently here, some of these we're going to have to change as well. You cannot see where I am currently at, and I've got a little cheat sheet here I'm just kind of looking at, and that way I can kind of compare it. You know, again, going back and forth, you need to have the drawings or the program in front of you when you do this. It makes it much easier. So, you know, I'm just kind of going back and forth. You're not seeing it on the screen right now, but what I'm doing, again, I've got a cheat sheet just to where I can compare. Again, you got to go back and forth between your drawings and this to get your points correct. Okay, you've got to make sure they're correct here, or it's not going to work. For example, right now, this is currently set to cold deck temperature for input number 1. That is not what I need. Okay, I need to basically shift all of these down. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do, just to make it a little easier on myself, I'm just going to select this whole group because I've got to rearrange them. I'm going to press the left, and it's going to pull them all off for me. And now I can arrange these to the way that I need them to match that DX9100 back panel the way that it's currently wired. All right, the first one that I'm going to need is the mixed air temp, so I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to shift it over. The next is going to be the cold deck temperature, and shift it over, and then I'm just going to keep going. Hot deck temp. And again, guys, what I've done is I've created just a little bit of a cheat sheet between looking at the drawings and you know, the programming from the original way that it was set up, and of course that page that I showed you just a minute ago. Hot deck temp next is going to be our return air temp, then our hot deck pressure, and the cold deck pressure. Okay, now that we have those selected, we are going to continue down. And actually, looking at my cheat sheet, let's go back and check something on the program, because there is a little bit of a difference between a couple of these. I just want to double check here my inputs. I may have to move those back up. Hardware. Okay, analog input 7. That is where it is coming into the DX9100. So let's go and see what it is right here on this. All right, analog input 7. You can see here, this is what it is on the DX9100, and it's going to basically cross over. So I actually do need to move that back up. All right, so I'm just going to highlight that, and that's going to be the one for the first floor. So yeah, again, guys, I'm just going to throw that in there, just letting you show you exactly what some of this programming is. You know, you do have to go and a little bit of trial and error at times. AI8. All right, and you can see that I do not have any more points available at the moment up here. Okay, so this point here, I am going to bring it up to the first point here. The other air handler was different. It was a little bit different on it. They were actually populated down here. They are on the expansion module, and there are a few additional points. So now I'm going to go through and just double check everything else. My supply fan, return fan status are correct. Filter alarm, discharge air high pressure, low pressure. It's given me a low temp alarm. I added that in. Unfortunately, looking at the drawing here, that is not an actual input that I have. Okay, so let's go back here. And you can see here I do not have that low temp status. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to close this out and I'm going to save the work that I've done so far. So it's something else that you're going to see when I do this. If I go into my system select and I scroll back down, I go to the next, I'm going to uncheck where it has the low temp switch and I'm going to hit finish. It's going to give me this block telling me that it needs to do some reconfiguring and that sort of thing. And when I hit yes, and I want to show you something very interesting. And this is just part of having to deal with writing the programming. Sometimes, you'll make a little mistake here or there and just go back and fix it. That's all you can do. It takes a minute for it to reconfigure things. And then we're going to have to go back and redo a couple of other things. I'm going to go back into my define hardware. And you can see, fortunately, we still have the points or the type of devices selected. I go over to point assignments, however, look what it's done to us. All of this is blank. So I've got to go back in and drag those over, but you saw how easy it was just a minute ago. So I'm just going to go right down the list. Once again, mixed air temp. It's trying to put it here. I don't need it there. I need it here. I need it in the first point. Cold deck temp. Grab it. Again, it placed it where it needs to be. Hot deck temp. And this is going back and forth between my cheat sheet, that sort of thing. Let's see, there we go. Next is our return air temp. Going to come over here, highlight it. And I'm just doing these one at a time, that way I can get them where I know they need to be. All right, hot deck pressure. Highlight it. And we'll be just a little bit redundant for a minute, but just bear with us. Cold deck pressure. Just want to make sure that I get all of these in the right place. Okay, now we have our first floor zone temp. And you can bring these over just a little bit to give yourself a little bit more of a view. And okay, let's go back just a second. I need to double check something. Let's make sure that it didn't blow out our zone temps. And it did. Okay, so what we're going to have to do now is we're actually going to have to add our zone temps back in. So part of the fun, guys, part of the fun. But I'm letting this run just to show you all some of the things that you run into. Okay, zone temp. 1K ohm nickel. You can organize it just a little bit where it groups them together. All right, 1K nickel. So I need 3 of those. Hit finish. So you can see with the mistakes that I've made, guys, maybe it'll, I'm just going to leave them in the video. Maybe it'll help you avoid making these same mistakes. All right, 3, 2, 1, they're there. I'll go back in and rename them later. So I'm going to go back to the define hardware, point assignment. And now I have my zone temp sensors pulled in, and I need just to pull them where they need to go. So for the first floor, that one's already labeled 1. I'm just going to grab it, pull it over. Second floor, next. I'm going to hit the one for the third floor, see where it goes. Boom, it went ahead and put that on the IOM for me because I am out of that particular type of input. All right. Now next I need my supply fan status, so I come over here and I grab the supply fan status right here, pull it over, and then keep going. Go return fan status. I'm just kind of going back and forth between my cheat sheet and what I'm actually doing, hoping that I don't mess up to that level again. Next is, of course, my filter status. Yeah, just double checking something. All right, and we'll keep going. Discharge air pressure, low and high. And again, guys, I'm just double checking to make sure that I got everything where I need it to be. So just kind of bear with me. Yep, that's it. Okay, grab it, pull it over, return pressure, and we just keep going. Mixed air damper output, and make sure that it goes down on the analog. And you can see what we have is it has actually put it on the second one, and that is not where we need it. I've got to move that one up. Just like that. Now I'm going to get my cooling output, and it's going to populate it onto the second. Our reheat output, and we just keep going. Supply fan output. And of course, we have supply and return. Okay. Return fan output. And you know, it's stacking them in there correctly now, right where we need them to be. You know, just a few adjustments here and there. And also we have our supply fan and our return fan command. You can do these in groups, like I'd pulled them off previously and then put them back, but you know, this just makes it easier on getting them in the correct position instead of having to drag and drop, move them around. Now then, the supply fan command, make sure that it gets into the right position. I'll put 7, and then of course our return fan command is going to be output 8. Now we have everything where we need it to be in this system, okay? And again, guys, what I did, as I mentioned earlier, I sat down with the DX programming and with this, and just kind of made me a little bit of a cheat sheet. It kind of simplifies the programming as you're going back and forth with this. And I'm literally going to put the mistakes that I made in here just where you can see it. And once we have this, again, like I'd mentioned before, always make sure that you save your work, save it regularly, that sort of thing. File, save. You don't want to do all this work and have to go back and do it again. And of course, you know, this program now is at the point where we could load it into a controller and start doing the checkouts. You know, there's still things that I know that I need to do to it, you know, just a little bit of tuning and that sort of thing. But we are at the point with this program that we are ready to load it. I've actually got some other videos on the channel to where I demonstrate how to upload, download a controller, that sort of thing. So you might want to check those out. But guys, I hope you like this video. I hope that this is something that you will be able to find a little bit helpful. And again, you know, look at the mistakes that I made here, and hopefully you won't repeat them. But if you do this work long enough, trust me, you're going to make little mistakes like that. This is just kind of an overview on this system. If you like this video, I would appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to share it with anybody that you know that needs a little bit of help. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave any questions down in the comments below. I'll try to do what I can to answer them. And guys, if you like the work that we do on this channel, I have got some affiliate links down in the description. Anything you purchase through those affiliate links go to help support the channel. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. There will be more videos coming out. You know, if you are a long-time subscriber, you know that I periodically put them out. It just depends on what we've got going on. Thanks for watching, guys. Check out the rest of the videos on the channel, and we'll see you next time.